Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. You know, as Civil War veterans aged and wrote about their wartime experiences in camp and on campaign, competing claims for all sorts of firsts emerged. It's not surprising. The men are now in their 50s and 60s, and they're looking back at the war and their service in a different way, maybe as they're beginning to face their mortality. One of the hottest debates revolved around who fired the first shot at the Battle of Gettysburg. In my research, I found that no fewer than four regiments claimed this distinct and unique honor. Here's a little bit about those four regiments and my take on who maybe has the better claim. The first and best known claim is by the members of the 8th Illinois Cavalry, and they held that the honor belonged to them. About 8:30, maybe a little bit later on the morning of the first day's fight, while on the picket line, one of the regiment's lieutenants, a man named Marcellus E. Jones, borrowed the carbine of one of his sergeants, Levi Schaefer, and aimed and squeezed off a shot at a rebel officer. In 1886, what were 20 years, a little more than 20 years after the battle, Jones, Schaefer, and another man, Lieutenant Alexander Ridler, erected their own monument on the battlefield, actually about 3 miles from Gettysburg, to mark the spot where Jones fired the shot. It's not necessarily an official battlefield monument, and that will come into importance a little bit later on. One other regiment, another cavalry regiment, the 9th New York, strenuously disagreed. They believed that a detail of men from their regiment fired the first shot more than 3 hours before the Illinois boys fired theirs. According to a report in a Buffalo, New York newspaper, quote, history tells us that at daylight on July 1st, 1863, Corporal Alphaeus Hedges of Company F, 9th New York Cavalry, an Asheville boy, it's a local town, who enlisted on September 20, 1861, aged 18 years, together with three men, was on duty at the advanced picket post on the Chambersburg Road. His orders were not to fire on anyone approaching from the front, but to send a man to notify the line and reserve. Men were seen approaching on the road beyond Willoughby's Run, about 1 mile distant. Acting on his orders, Hodges sent his men to notify the line and the reserve while he advanced across the stream, stopping to water his horse and then riding to higher ground beyond, it being high enough to see that, in fact, there were Confederates. As Hodges retreated, they fired on him. From abutments of the stone bridge, he returned their shots through the mists of the morning, it being then about 5:30 o'clock. Now, the 9th New York Cavalry, by the way, they're pictured here after the war, posing with their monument on the battlefield. So the story goes, the claim that the 9th New York made came to the attention of the Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association in 1886 after a delegation from the 9th submitted a proposal for the monument that you see here. According to the regiment's history, the Monument Committee, quote, who after much correspondence with the commission and with dealers and artists in granite and bronze, submitted a design and inscription which were approved. Two inscriptions, viz., discovering the enemy and picket on Chambersburg Road, fired on at 5 a.m. July 1st, were first strongly objected by the Battlefield Memorial Association on the ground of not being historically correct, until the committee appeared before a meeting of the association at Gettysburg with such convincing evidence admirably presented by Colonel Wilbur G. Bentley that's the man who was commanding the regiment, that the association voted unanimously to allow the inscriptions and made the following record in its published proceedings. At a meeting held July 3rd, 1888, a committee of the Ninth New York Cavalry appeared before the board and established to the entire satisfaction of those present that this regiment fired the first shot of July 1st, 1863. The monument was purchased and dedicated at a reunion of the survivors of the regiment at Gettysburg on the 25th anniversary. So here's those veterans of the Ninth New York Cavalry posed with their memorial. And that memorial, keep in mind, says that their regiment, was responsible for that first shot on July 1st, about 5 a.m. And it's recognized by the Battlefield Commission, which, in my opinion, gives them a leg up on the 8th Illinois, because their monument, located 3 miles outside of town, wasn't officially blessed by the Battlefield Commission. Now, there's 2 more regiments that also claimed the honors of firing the first shots, both cavalry regiments, the 17th Pennsylvania and the 6th New York. These 2 regiments have received a little less attention over the years, but I want to read you a couple of articles. Here's a 1921 article with the 17th Pennsylvania's claim. It says, "The recent discussion on your editorial page as to who fired the first shot at Gettysburg reminds me of the late D.H. Lord of Northfield, Minnesota, who was always confident that he fired the first shot on either side in that battle. He was a member of the 17th Pennsylvania Cavalry and was on foot on the skirmish line, numbering 4 holding horses, thrown across the Chambersburg Road very soon after daybreak on July 1st. The thousands of Confederate campfires had been in view all the night before, and from his position on the line, the whole country was full of the columns converging on Gettysburg. It was a beautiful summer morning, absolutely still, and without the slightest suggestion of the horrible uproar that was so soon to rage for 3 days over those hills and valleys. The sound of a rifle shot would have carried for miles in that air, and there had not been the faintest sound when some other bushes directly in front of him, a slouch hat slowly rose until it revealed beneath it was sure enough a Johnny with a long beard and clad in a long linen duster, a tall, cadaverous man intent on finding out what was in front of him. Mr. Lord said he instantly fired at him as soon as he had identified him as one of the enemy, the man as instantly disappearing, and that was the first shot at Gettysburg." So there's the account from the 17th Pennsylvania. And here's the 4th account from the 6th New York Cavalry. This appeared in a newspaper in 1908. It says, S.M. Ackerman, 6th New York Cavalry, Amherst, New Hampshire, takes exception to the statement made by a correspondent of the National Tribune. That, by the way, is the newspaper that the veterans read after the war, that Gamble's brigade of cavalry opened the battle at Gettysburg. He, Ackerman, recollects that the distinction belonged to Devon's brigade, which consisted of the 9th and 6th New York Cavalry and the 17th Pennsylvania Cavalry. Albert Ross of Company D served in Company H, 9th New York Cavalry, and corroborates Comrade Ackerman's account of the beginnings of that battle. The 9th, he says, was on picket, and he fired the first shot at 2:20, July 1st, 1863. It is so recorded on their monument at Gettysburg. Now, Ackerman has made a mistake here. He says 2:20 when it was really 5. Anyway, he continues, some other regiments did attempt to put a similar claim on their monument, but the Gettysburg Commission decided in favor of the 9th New York Cavalry, and it was therefore Devon's brigade which has the honor of opening the engagement on that Memorial Day. So there you have it, those four competing claims. Recognition for who exactly fired the first shot at Gettysburg is going to remain an open question. Though the 8th Illinois erected their monument first, the 9th New York has the advantage of their claim being confirmed by the authoritative Battlefield Memorial Association. So it's tough to pick, but I'd have to say the Battlefield Memorial group, having made their choice with 9th pictured here, kind of leans me in their direction. Of course, nowadays, we look at the Battle of Gettysburg differently than the veterans did. The veterans looking at it with an eye towards their own involvement in their own history and wanting to make sure that their regiment got the claim, the honor that was due to them. Today, we look at all those regiments with the same, mostly the same level of respect and honor. So thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.